Mark, just waiting on you.
Thanks, Paul. Sorry, I was waiting for the thumbs up to start. Can you hear me, Graham?
Yes, Mark.
Graham, great to see you. Thanks ever so much for your time. I guess there's only one place to start. The big departure of Dan Ashworth from the football club, someone who was instrumental in bringing you to Brighton. Just talk us through the mechanics of how this week has unfolded and how disappointing it is to see him depart the club.
Yeah, well, I received the news earlier in the week, like you say. Of course, disappointed because Dan was a colleague, he was a friend, he was someone that I respected a lot, and obviously, of course, I still respect him. And I think he's been an important person at the football club. But I think that's, these things happen. It's life. As I said before, we're at a really, really well-run football club, which doesn't rely on one person, as important as they are, whether that's Dan Ashworth, whether that's Graham Potter, whether that's Paul Barber. There's a good organisation here, fantastic chairman, and good people that have been here before me and Dan were here, and they'll be here after. So it is what it is. We'll move forward as a club together, and we'll take on the challenge of life without Dan as best as we can.
Was there a conversation you had perhaps with him to say, you brought me to this football club, I want to continue this working relationship that this season you've seen become so successful because of results on the pitch and performances and just the overall development of the club? Did you try and convince him to say, look, can you stay for a bit longer and let's keep building on what we're doing at the moment? Well,
as you'd imagine, I had lots of calls with Dan, lots of conversations with him. I understood his position. I think it was a really tough decision for him. But he's got his family, he's got his reasons, and then you have to respect. Dan's a grown man. He's a very intelligent man. He understands how good it is here and what he's got here. But at the same time, he's got another opportunity. So you have to respect that in life. That's how it is. And then it's about trusting him to make the decision that feels best for him. And then it's up to the club to sort the rest of it out. But from my perspective, I respect Dan. I respect what he's done for us. Respect the decision that he's made, and wish him well. But I know as a football club, this club doesn't rely on one person. As I said before, it's a real collective strength that we have, and that's what I think what'll take us through. Looking forward to working with David Weir, who'll take the step up as technical director, and we'll go from there.
One other man that's been spoken about over the course of the last week has been Yves Bissouma. Clearly someone who was spoken about a lot during the January transfer window. I think the fact that you managed to keep a hold of him despite some serious interest from other Premier League sides and some fairly hefty fees that were allegedly offered. Is there any perhaps progress with him staying at the club as opposed to moving on? Can he see the project that Brighton is and the development that the club's had since his arrival? Is there any conversations that are progressing with regards Yves and a new contract perhaps?
Well, I think it depends how you look at the situation. Yves is really enjoying his football with us, and we've had lots of speculation over various windows, and he's still here with us. But you also have to understand that the club and him, you face a point where you've got a decision to make. If there's Champions League interest, as an example, as a club, how do you compete with that? If you're to phrase Moose who's on the call, teams like Brighton, how do you compete financially, and how can you stop the player taking that opportunity up? It's very difficult because it not only hampers the relationship you have with the player, and it's a challenge for that, but it also damages your whole structure. We're clearly not a Champions League structured team, so it's quite complex. But we're quite relaxed about it. There's no pressure, no stress, no problem. We're enjoying Yves with us. We're enjoying his football, and I would suggest that our supporters are the same.
You talk about teams like Brighton. Brighton have only lost 4 games in the Premier League this season. Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, the only teams that have lost fewer matches. You have a couple of games in hand on some teams above you. You are mathematically still very much in the shake-up for European football.
Mathematically, what you've said is true, but our focus is on a very, very tough game against Watford, who are fighting for their lives, who will be desperate for the points. So I think it'd be foolish for us to think about anything other than that. We've done quite well in terms of our points accumulation so far, which means we've got 30. But that's not enough for us. We've got a hungry group, I think an ambitious group. And, rather than worry about what may happen in the middle of May, just worry about what will happen at the weekend is our approach.
Nice segue into Watford. When you look at your analysis and your prep work ahead of the game, how much has changed between Claudio's Watford team and Roy Hodgson's Watford team, and how does that affect the dynamic of your preparation and how you go into the match? Because clearly Roy's a very experienced manager who would have affected things immediately since his arrival at Watford.
Yeah, I think you can see his work. I think it's a credit to him and his staff that you can see what they're trying to do, and you can see clearly that it's I think it's helping them. I thought they played well against West Ham and were unlucky not to get something from the game. So, as you'd expect from Roy's teams, really, really hard to play against, really hard to create chances against, very compact, very aggressive, dangerous on the counter-attack with some individual players that I think Watford have got and they've had. Like I said earlier, we know it's going to be a tough match. We've played against Roy's teams and I don't think we've won. So we're certainly not underestimating the obstacle ahead, but that's something for us to do. We have to try and do it as well as we can, and we're looking forward to it.
And just finally from me then, some team news. Any updates on players coming back in? Any COVID news? Anything to worry about?
No, all the guys that were unavailable are now available. So that's good. Apart from Enoch and Jeremy Sarmiento, I think we've got pretty much everybody available.
Thanks, Graham. All the best.
Cheers.
Hi, Graham. It's James Cooper. I hope you can hear me okay.
Hi, James.
Just one question on the Dan Ashworth situation, only from a kind of positive Brighton perspective. How reassuring is it to have that structure in place that you can see someone like that leave and know that the whole house of cards isn't going to fall down?
Yeah, very important. That's why I said it a few weeks ago that I think we've got a fantastic, well-organised football club with lots of good people in lots of key positions, and then that filters down. So I feel very secure here. I feel very secure in the club. So I think it's dangerous as an individual to think that as soon as you leave, that everything falls away. That's not the case here. Certainly not. Our strength is how together we are. Our strength is how there's a relatively low ego, I'd say, and we're all here trying to do our best and work as well as we can.
In terms of the season ahead, I mean, I know you would have loved to have been in the FA Cup, but is the slight benefit to not being in it that you can be single-minded about your purpose in the Premier League, bearing in mind you've probably got one game a week except for this week to the middle of May that you were talking about?
No, I understand what you mean, but there was no benefit for us. So we were disappointed to go out. We wanted to go through. So we have to deal with that, but I get what you mean. Now there's nothing you can do about it now. We have to just focus on the league and focus on getting as many points as we can between now and the end of the season, and how you do that is start by Watford and start at the weekend.
I think you've almost answered this question already. I just wonder whether it's easier or harder facing a Roy Hodgson team that you know about. It almost looks in your eyes as though you think it's going to be a harder case now he's now manager of Watford than perhaps previously.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's a combination of lots of things. I mean, I think Roy comes in and he affects a change, because sometimes a change is positive, and then the person that's coming in has to be able to be competent and do something about that, which clearly Roy is. He's a fantastic, experienced football man who I have a huge respect for. After playing against his teams, but also how he just conducts himself generally. I think he's someone, as an Englishman, that has had a wonderful career across Europe, very well respected wherever he's gone. And so when you have a calibre of that, there's going to be a change. Of course, the previous manager's got his own CV as well, and that was very impressive. It's just, as I say before, the Premier League is so difficult. I'm watching the game West Ham versus Watford, and there's not an incredible difference between the two teams on the night. It's just that's the margins of the Premier League.
a final one from me. Could you see yourself managing in your 70s like Roy?
That's some question. Yeah, I mean, I've maybe my bar is quite low, or I'm not sure how I should set it. But if I'm here, I'm happy, and I'm healthy. That's enough for me, I think. So I'm full of admiration for Roy.
Brilliant. Good luck. Lovely to meet you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Hi Graham, how are you?
Very well, Ian. You gave me a little quote there that I enjoyed.
I'm glad we're still on speaking terms. That's good news.
Of course we are.
Absolutely. Comfortable 2-0 win at home against Watford. What's there to suggest it will be any harder for you at Vicarage Road?
Well, completely different circumstances. I think it was the second game of the season, something like that. I can't remember, but it was early on. Obviously, new manager at the start of the season, things can be a little bit more, if you say, looser. You get into this stage of the season, everything becomes a little tighter. Teams are fighting for their lives more so than they are in the second game of the season. So, a completely different context. We was at home then, we're away now. I'm pretty sure Watford as a group will have experienced and learned from the Premier League from that point. So you don't take too much from the past.
Yeah, and Roy's teams, I mean, they're quite hard to break down. You've already mentioned that. I mean, he's one of these managers who starts off with "I love a clean sheet" and then moves on from there. So it's really, would it be up to you to make the game in terms of making it entertaining, and with the way you play it, it's always entertaining, I guess.
Well, I think you have to respect the opponent. However they play, that's fine by us in terms of that. We're not certainly looking down our nose at anybody at all, because football is about scoring one more goal than the opponent. And starting with a clean sheet means you can accumulate points, means you can keep yourself in the Premier League, which I think Roy has demonstrated that he's very, very capable of doing. So it's not a beauty contest. It's not about subjectivity, who's better than who and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't mean anything. It's about who can score the most goals on the day, and that's the challenge. Because, as I said, Roy's teams are very organised. They're not only organised, but they can offer a threat in attack. Dennis, King, Sarr, if he's back and fit and playing, they're dangerous Premier League counter-attacking players. So they're not a bad team at all. They just haven't got the points, so they have to. We have to fight against them.
You mentioned goals there. First goals in every game are important. When you went 2-0 down at Anfield, played your football, got in the game, drew the game. Last week at Spurs, again, Spurs got ahead, but you were probably, up until they got their third goal, which they desperately needed to kill off the tie, you were, again, probably the better side and looking like you were going to force extra time. In a way, your team need to strive a bit harder to start better and get that first goal?
No, we start with intentions to do well. We start with the right attitude. There's no complaints from me at all about how we approach anything. In fairness to the players, they give everything and they try their best. As I said before, there's another team on the pitch that are also competing, so it isn't so easy. I think it'd be wrong for us to expect, because we're a team like Brighton, that we just turn up and then we just knock everybody over. I don't think that works like that. We have to be humble and respectful of the opponent, but also ambitious ourselves, as I keep saying. Try to be ourselves, try to play football, and then learn from whatever happens, and we've done that quite well.
And you've drawn 4 of your last 5 in the league. Is that frustrating? And how do you turn a draw into a win?
I think results-wise, it can be a little bit when you reflect back on our performances. And I guess that's the obvious bit for us to do better. You don't have to look at the league table, and it's a simple thing, but if we could turn some of those draws into wins, then it would be crazy, wouldn't it? Because we'd be in a really strange position.
Top 4, wouldn't you?
We'd be in a strange position then for a team like Brighton. So it's part of the challenge. It's part of the Premier League challenge. The margins, as I say, but it's our work. We have to try and do it. Every game is, and I'm sounding like I'm just reeling off cliches here, but every game is completely different. We draw against Palace, We draw against Chelsea, completely different games. Go to Leicester, probably missed an opportunity there when you consider our second half performance. So in the end, you've just got to focus on the next game, learn as much as you can, and try and get the 3 points.
And lastly, you mentioned the learning there. Your career, very much kind of, I know you're talking about whether or not you're still managing your 70s like Roy, but very much a similar pathway to Roy. You know, he went to Scandinavia to start off with and then got into the top league in this country. Do you see that as almost, I don't know whether you considered that at all going into this game?
Well, because I think Roy's my connection is with Sweden. You know, obviously I've been asked about Roy and spoken about Roy on many occasions. I understand the influence that he's had in certainly Sweden just from living there. He's a legend. So on that regard, it's an easy comparison or an easy conversation to have. But I think when you look at the longevity of Roy's career, I'm still relatively young guy, you know, and I've got a lot to do to get to the levels of Roy Hodgson because of all he's achieved and what he's done in the game and the amount of experiences he's had. I think he's someone that we should look up to as an experienced man, an experienced football man of huge stature, in my opinion.
Good luck on Saturday. Great seeing you again.
Thank you.
Hopefully I won't make the Brighton Twitter feed this week.
Graham, you often say that the solution is sometimes an internal one. How assured are you having David Weir step up into the role for the time being now that Dan's left? Well,
very, and I think only because I know David, I know the experiences he's had as a football man, as a guy. He has a huge respect from everybody at the football club. I think it'd be wrong to say, he's just going to come in and follow Dan's shoes, because that's unfair on them both. And I tend to avoid comparisons as much as I can, because I don't think you should, and it's not right for anybody. But as I said before, it's more about the football club as a collective. It's more about the people that were here before Dan, before myself, important people structurally at the football club that can help David to be the best version of himself in this interim period, and then we'll see what he and the club decide going forward. But I have huge confidence in him because I know it's a good environment to come into.
In terms of on the pitch, you welcome back Alexis McAllister and Leandro Trossard. 8 goals between them this season. Particularly with Leandro, I just wonder what he brings to the team when and what do you miss when he's not around? He's a very different player, and he's really grown, hasn't he, over his time at the club?
Yeah, he has. I think I always say players are unique, but he is a little bit in terms of we don't really have anybody with the same type of attributes that he has, which is he's able to play as almost like an extra midfield player to link the game, but at the same time he can run in behind and threaten the back line. If you saw his goal against Brentford, for example, it's a really good example of him attacking the back line and finishing. I think that's what he's done well. He's improved, but I think there's more to come from him in terms of adding goals and assists. But at the same time, he can also play the game, which helps the team build their attacks and get into the final third and create chances as a collective. So he's an important player for us, and he's an important person in the group, in the dressing room, and it's nice to have him back.
You're heading to Watford. Can you cast your mind back to your first game in charge in the sunshine? Can you remember how you were feeling before kick-off, standing in that technical area?
I can. It was a boiling hot day. I'll take the performance and result again, no problem. I thought after the game, this Premier League lark's easier. How wrong I was. Came back to earth fairly quickly after that. Really, really nice. I mean, on your first game, everybody will say as a coach, you want to get off to a good start. Couldn't have got any better for us. Brilliant day, and I remember celebrating in front of the supporters, family are in the crowd, so it was a nice start.
And in terms of, you've talked about Roy Hodgson, but what about their players? They may welcome back Ismail Assar. They brought in some new players during the January transfer window. Emmanuel Dennis has got quite a lot of plaudits as well. They've got quite a variety of different threats, haven't they? Yeah,
I mean they've invested in the playing squad, and you can see by the manager changes they've had, there's obviously an ambition to stay in the Premier League, as a thought and an expectation to be in the Premier League. So that's probably matched by the investment in the team and the players they have. And as I said before, the players you mentioned, they're capable players in the Premier League, absolutely. You can see some of the results in it. They've beaten Manchester United, they've beaten Everton. They're capable of beating teams on their day, absolutely. So, and then, as I said earlier, Roy gives them an organisation and his way and his experience, I think, which will be invaluable for them. So we need to make sure we need to be up for the challenge, which I know we will. And then it's football.